Adriana, it is a pleasure to meet you. Thank you so much
Likewise.
for participating in our celebration of Hispanic Heritage Month. And this month, we wanted to talk to business owners, Hispanic business owners and entrepreneurs that really wanted to just kind of showcase their stories and uplift their stories and their entrepreneurial journey towards success. And so the theme of the conversation is identity as an asset. And we talk a lot about being a person of color, about sort of the challenges that we face, but I think we don't spend enough time talking about how we leverage our identity, our racial identity, but all of the other identities that we have as assets. And so that's really what I want to dive into today. So my first question really is just for you to introduce yourself and share a little bit about your business and kind of, what led you to becoming an entrepreneur.
Okay, well, thank you for the interview. And my name is Adriana Cortes. I started the business Delicious Southern Cuisine and Delicious at the Dunbar with my father, Vidal Cortes. And we started the business back in 2011. So we've been now in business, thankfully, going 13 years this month. We're very, very excited about that. And we really started business, I think, because of my father. He's been cooking soul food for 34 years roughly. So my father's been cooking at a lot of like known soul food restaurants in the LA community for that long. We're talking about from Boulevard Cafe, which has a lot of historical ties with a lot of prominent like political figures within LA, or Jerry's Flying Fox, where everyone knew that was the best gumbo in town. There is, and he's worked with many, many other restaurants since, but that's really where he got his knowledge of soul food. And when he realized that soul food is and similar to Mexican food because it's highly rich seasoned food. That's rich palate food. He just fell in love with the cuisine like some 30 some odd years ago. And I think it was interesting because he was what he had to say, not maybe like a little machista, like a lot culture, like men don't belong in the kitchen. So his really, he didn't expect to get into the kitchen. He was more like a server, busser, and then helped in the back, things like that. But with time, any restaurant business, you'll know people are always calling off sick, people are needed in emergency cases, and he just happened to step up. He ended up doing prep work, then he ended up learning a little bit more of the kitchen, and little by little, he really just again fell in love with the food. And on that's how he really became a cook, started growing in many different restaurants, started developing his own recipes. And I don't think he ever really saw himself as a business owner. It's not something that he was okay working for different restaurants for many years until the 0809 crash happened. It was the first time in his that he'd had trouble with jobs, that his employers had issues paying him what he was worth. Both my mom and father were in the restaurant industry and they were both suffering. So, I was at the time finishing school at UCLA, and we'd struggled to finish paying those last quarters because at the same time, the fee hikes are going crazy. Tuition was going up, 20 to 30% each year. And so, the last year, those scholarships aren't in as much. You get a good help with the first few years, but that last year was really tough. So my father was taking on, 3 jobs just to help, cover those expenses, books and everything that needed to be covered with tuition. And so when one of the locations he previously worked at closed down, he was like, Mija, you know, would you open this up with me? Is this something, everyone keeps telling me I should open up my own business for years, and I've never really considered it until now. And I just finished school. I was working actually at a nonprofit. Um, and I was like, yeah, I didn't even think much about it, honestly. It was like a no-brainer for me. It was, for one, to find financial security for my family, for one. Two, a way to pay back and give back to my parents who had given up so much for me. And also I wanted to help him also with his own dreams. Like he'd my father, again, my parents have done everything for me, so I was beyond grateful. I was the first one in my family to go to college, so that was huge, of course, milestones for my family. But I was like, I have these tools that I've learned within school, these knowledge I've had. Um, I have something that I'm able to help them, So I did whatever I could to learn business at that point, how to open up a business. It is hard at the time. It's not something you can just, I didn't know how to Google it and find things out, how to start a business. So I just questioned as many people as I could. And, going to like Norwalk, trying to figure out how to get a DBA, trying to go to, then with that, learning the steps, like, okay, asking everyone, how do you go start a business? How do you get a bank account? How do you get an EIN? All of that process, we navigated it together. And it was interesting. It was hard at times. We put every savings we could. We borrowed money from every family member and any vendor that he ever had knowledge that gave him credit so that he can pay back it whenever he could. That's the way that we started the business. And as tough as it was, thankfully within, I think, a year and a half, and buckling in that money really, really tight, we paid off everyone off. So it was really tough, but it was just as happy for us to be able to have done that. And now we have 2 locations. So like I don't think I mentioned it very well. I do apologize. Of course, we focus in soul food. The first location is fast casual takeout. Our second location is dine-in, and it has a little bit of Mexican cuisine in it, so it's a little fusion. And we have a full liquor license there and live jazz.
That's remarkable. Well, congratulations. I mean, it just
Thank you.
an incredible story and just some things that you mentioned around, um, your father sort of not identifying himself as an entrepreneur or a business owner, but having this idea and then, pulling you in to take action is, I think that's like such a common story, particularly in communities of color where, out of necessity, you start something entrepreneurial. And I think there's entrepreneurial things that folks are doing all the time that they just don't sort of identify as that. I'm curious to hear, how does your identity or the various identities um, that you have, how does that influence the way you run your business?
Well, I mean, I think one, having been in those steps and having been an employee, having been for so many years, it gives us a perspective on what our employees want and need. Job security, of course, a livable wage is still always hard. We don't run like a McDonald's that offers 2 or 3 hour shifts. Our employees are looking for to not have 3 jobs. So we try to offer them full-time jobs if that's what they seek. So that means us rattling our brains trying to work out schedules. But understanding, like my mother, she worked having 2 children. And so like in my females, understanding that some of them want morning shifts because they will need to take their children to school and then pick them up, and so they can take care of them while the husband possibly is taking the night shifts. Things like that are things that I as a business owner, I understand these things because I've lived them,
Mhm.
and so I do these practices I take their input a lot into whatever we're doing. And I think that I don't know, I can't think of anything right now, but I really, really hone into like the things that my parents have taught me in terms of hard work. Um, we are, you will see my father to this date, running around every day. Some of my vendors, employees, and they're like, they see how hard he still works, even with some of his health issues at times. He's had recently he's had like sciatic pain issues that left them almost immobilized for a few
Oh,
months.
so sorry.
And so even despite that, he's like, I want to get out there to work. And that work ethic is something that's influenced me a lot to really push, because restaurant work is not easy.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh,
Restaurant work is not a easy industry. It's a really tough industry with typically high turnover rates of employees. Thankfully, I'm happy to say that I have employees for 11 years. As a small business, we keep I don't think in general, people who leave us is because they're going back to school. They're going into different, they have to move on. They need to go to graduate school. They're going into careers of better fulfillment, which is, I understand. Not restaurant work is not meant to be for some people their whole lives. It's a starting stage, which is great. Some are here because that's what they love. They love cooking, whether they love serving, and that's perfectly fine. We understand we have staffs from all different you know realms, and I really really value that. So of course the youngins are the ones who are like typically here just as their first time job ever, so we have to teach them how to use a broom. Sometimes we have to teach them how to do these things, but it's fine. That's the way we know that comes with the
yeah.
territory.
Well, we were all there at some point, right?
Yeah.
Um, so as you think about what's next for your business, what does that look like? And continue with that theme of how does identity sort of maybe show up in that for you?
um I think that one, we've now experienced what a takeout restaurant. We do a lot of catering, and we have a sit down dine-in restaurant. And we really think that we found ways that we are able to connect to our community no matter which of these we go through. Catering, I think, is one that we probably want to continue long term and expand more in, because catering, we follow our customers through many stages of their lives, whether it's like birthdays, retirement parties, weddings, unfortunately repasses, um, you know, company parties, different things. And that's something we really, really want to expand on. We'll still have our flagship locations, maybe down the line expand to another takeout location, because it is much better in terms of profit for square footage when you have a much smaller footprint in terms of space. It's a lot easier, but catering is something we want to really expand. And I think that my father really not only wants to focus on soul food, we still have both soul food and Mexican food within our catering. Um, because there was like, how are you guys Mexican and don't cook Mexican food? And we started with soul food, so it wasn't really an option because we didn't think of mixing the two, honestly. But when we did our dine-in location, and we're more on the east side of LA, like we're on Central Avenue, um, as it has a lot of rich history within the Black community. But however, the community is now different. It's now like 90% Latino. So we're like,
Mm.
when we opened up, we wanted to have a little bit of both. I think that we have, I describe to my Latinos that come in here, it's like jambalaya is like like a soul food paella. you know,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
explained to
I
them
love
that,
that. Yeah.
or we'll do, sometimes we have like fried chicken tacos. So, you have a little bit of that, or something that we've used some few things and we show them how the flavors they're different. They're different items, but they're similar in many regards. Cornbread, it's, it's something that is corn is in so many things of Latino culture. Like it's something they can easily identify with. Um, I and so my goal is that in the future, when we go into more catering, we're able to do a little bit more fusion on dishes and really highlight both cultures.
That's great. That's great. We're I think I just one final question. I guess is there anything that you didn't get to say or that you didn't get to share that you wanted to say in this conversation?
Well, I think that another thing that I really am I'm proud of is that there aren't many female restaurant owners out there. Um, and I think that that's something that I really have been proud of because it's not a tough it's a tough industry, but I'm very, very lucky that as a family we're able to support each other. My father is able to not one um back me up in terms of like, no, she's the boss. You have to don't just come to me because a lot of like even employees and vendors and many times they will they'll be like, oh no, your father's the boss. He's the man. He is the one that I need to address. And he will tell them, no, you have to address it to her. She's the one that's running the show right now. And so that's something I'm glad that I have because it's sometimes you have to show I have sometimes a voice that they're like people think I'm just so kind and quiet at times they're like, oh, she's not bossy, she's not that boss level, I don't see that from her. And I'm like, I don't need to be loud, I don't need to be
Yeah.
there to show that I have these are the way that things have to get run, and I'm glad that I have that for my family, and I'm glad that with time my staff has learned to respect even those that at one point were like, "Oh, okay," it surprised them because not everyone's used to a female having to tell them to do stuff. To it's a just especially when you come from it has to be said a little bit. Latino culture sometimes a little bit machista.
Mhm.
It has that in them, and we have to
Yeah.
get rid of that a little bit. And I think that it's hard for some, particularly some men, older men, to really get that. Which I'm glad that little by little we're able to work through that here.
Well, it's great that we have you as a leader to sort of break down those barriers. So thank you.
I, I don't think about it too often, honestly. So I was looking at all these questions of how that affects running a business in a sense.
Well, thank you so much for this conversation,
Oh,
and
no, thank
I really
you.
appreciate your time.